This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and back for a part two interview is none other than the Berzerker, John Nord, former WWE and WCW star, was also in the AWA. He's done it all. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good, Hannibal. From that last one we did, man, I got a lot of feedback. I had a lot of guys call me, so it was whatever,
The
whatever.
question I was asking you at the end of our last one was about the
Yeah,
Ultimate Warrior. Why don't we
yeah,
start with that? What are your memories of him?
sure. The memories of him. Well, what you get a lot about him is um, he wasn't real popular in the dressing room because he was, I mean, and God bless his soul, but he was pretty arrogant. He wanted his own dressing room, and he didn't. You never seen him with the boys in the big dressing room. You know, he always had to have his own show, or I mean, his own room. And of course, I didn't have no angle on TV with him, but I did wrestle him a lot of nights. And he whatever he just, I mean, you put him over. He was over, man. They loved him.
Yeah, they did. Was he easy to work with from like doing the same match every night? You wouldn't really have to
he,
try or
yeah, he was easy to work with. um and he didn't like potato. Yeah, he didn't hit you in the nose and you're bleeding all because he's a star. I think personally that he was careful he didn't tick anybody off, because there were guys that like the same opinion that I got, like especially DiBiase. Ted is not necessarily my favorite guy, but me and him agree on one thing, that the Ultimate Warrior, um, man, just didn't really pay many dues, and he just got pushed to the max, and he didn't know. He just was turned into a just a shithead.
Sid was telling me that Ted DiBiase liked to fuck the ugly arena rats. Did you ever notice that?
Listen, I knew Teddy from '85 in Mid South, and I did some bar hopping with him for a few months, and that's actually pretty true. Um, he would be sitting there at the bar, and he'd go, "Hey, look at her." I said, "Yeah, she looks pretty rough." "Oh, are you kidding me? She looks great." And man, that's the one thing, before he sobered up, cleaned up, and found the Lord. And I'm glad he did, because he kept his wife and marriage and the kids and all that. But before that, Ted was a hound. And like I said, Ted ain't necessarily my favorite person, because he's like, it's always about Ted. Always. He won't let you say one word. He'll tell you all about his kids. Last time I seen him, he told me all about Teddy. This wasn't last time. I take it back. It was in '07. He said, Teddy hasn't had sex at all before he's getting married to this girl. He was kind of always bragging about his family. And then I was going to tell him about my family, and then he just walked away. I got to go. I'm like, oh, okay. One of these guys. I get it.
He's actually been in a lot of trouble in recent years. I don't know if you've heard, but there was money that was supposed to go to the poor, and I guess his son was part of the people allocating it. And I guess
Really?
somehow his ministries received like over 700,000 of money that was designed to go to the poor and not actually
Really?
his ministry. So he has to pay it back now.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm glad whoever busted him on that, kudos to him, because Ted deserves to get busted. He's got this uncanny ability to just money, self, conversation. He just absolutely thinks super highly of himself. And Hannibal, you watch, if you ever watch his ministry speeches, I've watched a few, and he opens up his sermon with, you know, I love money, and then he goes to the thing like, yeah, I just had to get that out of my system. He'd say, and really, all you're doing is trying to bogart and brag about yourself,
And don't they sell gimmicks at those sermons too after? It's very similar to wrestling where you're just basically cutting a promo, but
It,
you're trying to do it for God, I guess, in that case.
it is, and if you do it clean and right and don't take none of the money, it's all really good. But yeah, that's what they do. They got books, and Ted probably had his 8x10 pictures, wrestling pictures. He probably had his action figures. So it's just like just like that. And that is not my thinking of a church deal,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's not yours either.
Jake was doing it for a while too, and I don't know how sincere he was, but his promos were good.
Guys like Jake and DiBiase, Hannibal, Jake, I was with him in '85 too, and like every night, and you really get to know a guy. We're wives, we're friends for a little bit, and all that. And what you find out is they just can't help themselves. After a while, they just can't help themselves except to either take some money or like Jake goes around preaching or not preaching, but doing like the sobriety thing. And I know if you know Jake well, you just know he's not sober all the way. He might be like 90% sober, but he don't tell anybody about that 5-10% he snuck out like one day a month.
You're known for being quite the partier. What's the craziest party story you could tell us that you've been involved with that won't get you in too much trouble?
Well, the craziest thing was, and I don't know if I mentioned it last time I was on, but me and Hawk were in SummerSlam over in London in '92 at Wembley, that big house they had there. And instead of going home like everybody else, we ended up with the Hells Angels at the Holiday Inn in Kensington, downtown London. And one of the guys was from Minneapolis. So that's why Hawk wanted to go. And he said, "You want to go?" I said, "Yeah, man, let's go. Let's tear it up." And when you're drunk, there's always bad decisions in my that I do, but this one was extra bad. And we ended up in Luton, England, in the Hells Angels chapter house, and I was so freaking the high. Somebody just handed me this paper strip, and I went, "Give me that. What is this?" "Well, it's acid." And I says, "Well, this thing's gonna hurt me?" I says, "No way." So I just gulped it. Oh man, I was people's faces were turning into demons, and Hawk, same thing. Well, we both failed the piss test before we went there to England the night before. So we knew we were both in trouble. We knew we were both going to get 6 weeks off cut and dried. And we both did. But, you get stranded for 3 days in the Hells Angels chapter house. It's like there's bunks upstairs in this old house. And when you're coming down, off the booze and whatever you're doing, man, it's just, there's serious, like demons. And, you're just going, what did I do? That's just one that rings in my head that I just, it was just such a bad screw up, you know.
Was that the only time you hang out with bikers?
Yeah, I'm not a biker guy. Yeah, hang out, dude. Matter of fact, the Hells Angels in Minneapolis were pretty prevalent until they all got in trouble and then they all went to jail, which was about 10 years ago. But no, I'm not a biker guy, dude. But they're personally, I don't like them. But that's just the guys from Minneapolis, Hells Angels. They thought they were tough. They never trained a day in their life. They just walked around with tattoos and a big gut, but they were supposed to be the badasses. And I remember I was 18 running Ventura's gym, and Ventura would go, "Hey, Johnny, the toughest guys in the world are the Hells Angels." I said, "Are you kidding me? These guys don't work out and they walk around and they some of them are probably really great guys, but they're all obviously quite lost. If you're in the Hells Angels, you're kind of, you know."
Yeah, that's a bad group of people for sure.
Oh man, terrible. I don't know what, it's a macho thing to be in, and they join, and then they end up, they do their first sale of a little bit of coke, and then it turns bigger, than meth, and then you're looking at major prison time. Them guys.
Did you do much coke in the 80s? A lot of the wrestlers did over that decade in particular.
Oh, absolutely. The guys did. The '80s were crack and coke, and but you didn't ever even want to see the crap until you got drunk. And then you said, hey, I need a little uplift here, because the alcohol bring you down, and then you want to get back up and going. You want to, and so that's what you do. I can tell you this. I'll tell you what I've never done is meth and this one, a lot of people say, no way. But I've never even tried pot. Just ain't my deal. My deal is booze and then powder, cocaine. You just sneak in the bathroom and do a little bump up your nose and you're good to go.
Well, Hawk was really into that too, so maybe that's why you boys got along.
You're right. He was, and it was, and a lot of other guys were too, but they didn't. You got your guys that sit at a kitchen table and do line after line for 3 days. You can fall into that if you're not careful. But then there's the guys that just do a little here and there and they go home. But not if you're guys like me and Mike. So
yeah, even Hogan has admitted in his book that he would do it. Did you ever wrestle on that stuff? Because I would imagine it might be a negative impact on your match.
It's terrible. Yeah, I did one night in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and of course it was me and Hawk the night before, but I was so freaking high and shaky, and I was wrestling Snuka, and Jimmy's really easy to work with. Jimmy's like a fine piece of china. If you do it too hard, he's gonna break. Because he's old and he's been doing it for so long. Even back then, in '91 too, and all I did was I couldn't even hardly talk. I was really ashamed of myself, but I sent word over. I says, tell Jimmy I messed up, that he's got to take care of me in the match, and let's just please get me out of there. So I go in the match, and then I tell the ref, I said, tell Jimmy I'm screwed. Well, Jimmy just did it perfectly, did this, that, and he did all the work, and the match was over, and I got out of there, and man, what a lesson I learned, though. Never again, and I didn't.
Mitch, fan watching on here, wants to know, do you have any stories about JYD doing crack? Because he was known for his drug use. And I
Well,
guess,
yeah. Well, I didn't know him very well. I knew him. I went out with him a couple nights in Mid-South in '85, my second year of wrestling. And JYD was already gone in '85, but he came back and did a couple shots for Watts. And he had his own kind of following, the girls. And then he went into that hotel room and shut the door for 2 days, and they're not in there playing checkers, They're in there.
Another wrestler told me that sometimes the girls would actually either bring him coke for him to fuck them or pay him to have sex because they were such big fans, and he would use that on drugs, I guess.
I agree. But that son of a gun was over, man. In Mid-South back then, man, was he over. That's why, yeah. I agree.
Yeah, he was over huge. It's too bad his demons kind of like caught up with him, I think. Never reached
Yes,
his full potential.
the demons did, Hannibal. They did get him, and nobody wants to go out that way. When you're partying, you don't think that night you're going to slide off into eternity, and I'm guilty of it. And it's like you wake up and they say, God, I'm glad I didn't die, man. Holy smokes, never again. And then you do it again, But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the stories on the Minnesota guys, you got, Henning and Hawk and Rude and a guy named Brady Boone, and they all went down. Was it overdose? I think so, on all of them,
There's that rumor. Have you heard about this Rick Rude rumor that it was an intentional overdose because some sort of penis thing went wrong? I'm not sure if you've heard any about anything.
I did hear about that, and I want to say back then, like right after it happened, I think it was Kurt Henning, and we all talked about it, and then that's what we had heard, that exactly that he was shooting up to, I mean, Rick had that, I guess you call it, demon of he just wanted to get kinky as hell and get numb, and then he would actually shoot it in his pecker, and like one out of a million guys will do that. That's just very rare. I mean, that's the extreme of the extreme. And Rick had it, and it was a tragedy. It was a tragedy. And then you heard, didn't you, that his son died in that motorcycle crash?
No, when did his son die?
Oh, man, I don't know what year, but I mean, could you imagine being his wife? I mean, Rick Rude dies, and Rick Rude Jr. dies on a motorcycle crash, and I think he was kind of out of control. Maybe not, but I think he was. And if he wasn't, it was just flat sad, because he was in the wrong place, wrong time. But I think he was, really going fast and all that. But to have his son and him go over the years that's just terrible, man. hits you in the gut, don't it? Just thinking about it.
Did you ever hear that he had some fetish that like he liked to beat up guys for trying to hit on his girlfriend? I heard Paul Bear tell this story, and it was like he would purposely kind of allow that to be set up just so he could beat up the guy.
Put it this way, I don't know if it was like consciously true, but I think he kind of did it like I mean, just like he's drunk now, he's had 7, 8 beers, and now all of a sudden he's getting paranoid about who's looking at his wife, and maybe he gave it a nudge. Sometimes is what I think. Maybe he gave it a nudge, but yeah, Rick was like that. And like I said, Rick and Hawk both hit like mules. Were they both the toughest guys? No, because most of the guys that are, as well as I do, most of the guys that are actually the toughest most of the time are a combination of ultimate fighting, wrestling, boxing. They've done it all. And you just ain't going to be able to keep up with a guy like that in a fight. No way.
Do you have any stories about Kurt Hennig? You've mentioned him a couple times, and the fans always like to hear about him.
Yeah, they do, don't they? Yeah, Kurt, greatest guy, and everybody says that, but he really was. I love the guys that say, well, he was my best friend. I'm like, hold it, because you were friends with him in WWF, you weren't necessarily his best friend. Guess I'm referring to Bret Hart. I'm like, anyways. So, any stories about Kurt? Yeah. Where was I going with this? He was just such a great guy. But Kurt was. You got to remember what's going on inside him and what he's thinking. Kurt, before he got really buff and big and everything, he was really a passive guy. He was just in the background kind of deal. I mean, he had sandy hair, crooked teeth, weighed $180. And I told him this to his face, but yeah, and was, I'll tell you this. As far as the Minnesota guys, he kind of was the first guy in 1981 to go with Brad Rangan's camp, and Brad, by orders of Greg Gagne, and I just talked to Brad Rangan's, and he actually reminded me of this. He says, Greg told me to stretch him, So Brad would and Kurt, what a guy, man. The guy just took these butt kickings. He never gave up. He never was going to quit. He paid his dues big time. And of course it paid off because he wanted to learn more and more and be the best. And man, what a talent. But a lot of people don't know Hannibal. Kurt Hennig played at a junior college football, Normandale in Minnesota, and they had some great players. They really did. They could have beat a lot of Division I teams. But anyways, Kurt was a linebacker, and to watch him play football when he was young, and I guess he was about 190, and to watch him, he was all over the field. He was just had really superb linebacking abilities. And then when Normandale won this game in Minneapolis, it was in the paper the next day. Hatchet Henning tackles North Hennepin. I don't know where they got the hatchet. I guess because Larry's the axe, but.
There's a lot of fans watching, and I know you've said this in another interview, but a lot of fans want to hear you tell the famous Muffler story.
Oh my God. Well, first of all, I had a few guys talked to me, asked me, "Is that true?" And I'm like, "Do you really think I'm gonna just go into depth on something like that?" But it wasn't true. I might spice it up a little bit, but well, it was in the Rosemont Horizon, and that's north of Chicago, a few miles. And it used to be, now it's the Allstate Center, but in the locker room, Vern Gagne I ended up there. I was actually with the New Jersey Generals not too long before that, and I had my jersey on and my New Jersey Generals, and before the match, I'll try to condense it here. Before the match, I'm looking in the locker room out of the corner of my eye, and these real big, huge guys like Dusty, Kurt, or Larry Henning, Jerry Blackwell, and I gotta say, I'm not sure Andre had one, but I did throw him in there on the story. But I ain't sure about him if he had him. But these other three all did. And Dusty comes up to me before the match and he said, "Hey, Big Johnny, baby." And we've been talking like Dusty, or we try to talk like him, since seventh grade. Kurt came up to me in seventh grade after seeing Dusty on Sunday morning wrestling and said, "Hey, Big Johnny, baby." So me and Kurt always talked like Dusty to each other, just kind of being squirrely, that's all. But so Dusty came up and said, "Hey, Big Johnny, you got your muffler in?" Because he seen I was kind of looking. And I said, "No, I don't think I need one of them. And I had no reason what was going on. I mean, it didn't take a brain surgeon to see that it was for general seepage out of you don't want to get white trunks with a big brown spot. And I said, "No, I don't need one of them." So we go in the match, and the finish is me pile drive them, and I wasn't going over, but I forgot what happened after the pile driver. But anyways, the main thing was the pile driver. I go to get him up and to lift him up, and I had never done a pile driver before. I've been in the business for 5 months, and even in camp, I never did a pile driver. So anyways, I tried the first time to get him up, and he didn't go. And I thought, God, is he being stiff with me, or am I doing this wrong? And I'm getting nervous. I see Vern by the door looking real closely at the match. So my job's kind of I got to get this finish right. Second time I took his tights and they stretched. And his butt cheek was kind of hanging out. Now the fans are heckling, They're like, "You can't get him up, you greenhorn, and come on," and all that. And I just kind of panicked, but I had my left arm around his stomach, but then my right hand just like grabbed his butt cheek really hard and squeezed it, and he went, "Ah!" I heard him down there, So I pulled him up, but I wasn't sure how the muffler got loose, the white toilet paper, and I pulled it to the side a little bit, and his muffler fell out in the ring. And now I got him up, but I'm looking down at the corner of my eye, and there it is laying there, just nasty too, like maybe there was a little bit of an accident. So I pile drive him, 1, 2, 3. But right before I pile drive him, he said, "Big Johnny, my muffler fell out, baby," and and that was Dusty. And turned him over. Can't remember what happened because I know I didn't go over, but 1, 2, he probably kicked out, and then something he did to me, and then he probably went over. But now the fans are heckling like, What's that? That fell out. Did you see that? Did you see that? I seen that. What's laying in the ring? What is that? Your tampon, you homo? You know, and it was just, and at the time, believe it or not, it wasn't that big a deal because it was kind of something between me and Dusty. And I just came back. I was more concerned about having a good match because that's what we did. We want the. That's why I don't know why a lot of guys are just more talented than other guys to get to the top. But most of the guys I knew from Minnesota, we were more concerned with we had to try to have a good match. You know, that's what we focused. We didn't necessarily focus on is Vince gonna put me on top. That was the furthest thing from our head. We just wanted to have a good match every night. So, yeah. So that's kind of the Muffler Story. And when you've had a few pops, you can spice it up a little bit and make people laugh.
Yeah, there was a fan asking if you threw it into the crowd.
Huh?
There's a fan on here that asked if you threw it into the crowd.
Hell no. But I'll tell you this, me and Dusty were both on the mat like this, and we were like both laughing, but we're trying. And then I heard it, they're laughing. They're laughing. What's this? You know, they thought it was. And then I heard a guy in the fans scream, it's part of the show. It's just part of the show. And yeah, so now everybody should know what a real muffler is. Not like the Midas muffler, but the wrestling muffler.
There's some fans on here that have been asking about Grandma B's. What was it like to bounce there? Are the stories true of how rough it was? And was that the roughest place you ever bounced?
Oh, God, yes. It was. The stories are definitely true. It was this bar right on the Mississippi in kind of a bad part of Minneapolis. And our friends that we went to high school with opened it up, and it was a big place, had an upstairs, downstairs, and it just turned into wet t-shirts. They had a lot of wet t-shirts nights, and anybody, I assume everybody knows what that is. And then, but there was a big doorway lobby, and like typical bouncer, put your beers back, can't take them outside. But these guys, Hawk bounced there. I did for a pretty short time. And Wayne Bloom did, and Barry Darso did, and some of the guys that were beat up, and a guy named Al Blake did, and Al was kind of a badass. I don't know if Kevin Kelly did, but Kevin would have been we're just lucky nobody got killed by punching them. We've all punched guys for real, at least most of us, and most guys think the same. God, I'm glad I'm not in jail right now because I hit that guy so hard. But yeah, it was just insane.
Now, there was another fan asking, back when you were in your peak shape, is there any particular steroid cycle that you did that you felt worked the best?
Well, I tell you what, I didn't really do cycles. What I did was I'd buy like a cheap bottle of Equipoise or testosterone, and I would just take a shot here and there and all that. That's why obviously when you watch the old matches, some matches you look huge, and other matches you don't look so huge. But I wasn't a cycle guy. But I tell you this, when I was playing football, I was taking Anavar, and that stuff it was just great. You didn't hold a lot of water, so you could move quick, and it got you strong, and it really got you it really got you in shape. You looked like a bodybuilder, and I got I don't know if you want me to tell this quick, Hannibal, but I got a Steve Williams story that when
Sure.
we were both with the New Jersey Generals at the same time, and Doc was he was a really good football player. Yeah, I mean, here's this guy with a gut, but he's took second in nationals in wrestling and started at Oklahoma, and he's got a big gut, but he's got veins in his thighs, and he was just athletic as heck for being a big guy. And but one time we were scrimmaging, and this old tackle from Minnesota, from the University of Minnesota, named Greg Murtha, all of a sudden I hear him go, ah, and he's screaming, and he goes, that son of a bitch did it on purpose. That son of a bitch did it on purpose. And he's screaming, he's pointing to Doc. Like Doc came down on him because Doc was D-line. This guy was O-line. And Doc came down on his knee, and he wasn't trying to. And he blew out the guy's knee. And he blamed Doc as he was in pain, He said, he intentionally did it. Well, the guy was just out of his head, and even if he for real thought that, you don't yell that. Anyways, they cut Doc the next day. And that was in 83. So when I went to Mid-South in 84, I walk in this wrestling room, and then me and Doc look at each other and go, wow, I didn't know you were in wrestling. I didn't know I'd be coming here and run into you. I never thought I'd see you again. And first thing Doc said was, hey, man, you believe what that guy did to me, man? Hey, they cut me the next day, man. And they did. So just thought I'd throw that little New Jersey Generals. The young guys don't know who it is, or even the middle-aged guys, but it's a USFL. Our big gun was Herschel Walker, and he was a pretty cool guy. I like Herschel.
How was the pay for that?
I made 42.5, 42,500.
Well,
And
that's not bad for the 80s, I guess.
well, for the USFL too, but most of the linemen made about 30. And I just had a good agent. Man, you get a good agent. And I had a guy named Bob Stein who played middle linebacker for the Chiefs. And because I wasn't that good. I was a guy that I was barely hanging on to my job. So, but I got a year and so many months out of that, and I was happy to get out. My body was already failing me, So
Yeah. What was your best lifts when you were at your peak for bench press, squat, and deadlift?
I did 505 bench. I did a squat like 650 and a deadlift about 700. I was, in the day I had a big back, and everybody thought I'd be this great deadlifter. But I wasn't. Wayne Bloom was. Wayne Bloom, one of the Beverly brothers, he's got the American, well, he had the American record, and he's real good, buddy, real close to me, of 832. So, I mean, for a guy 220, or was he in 242 pound class, did 832, which was an American record. So
That's pretty big weight.
Oh my God. For a deadlift, that's just incredible. But that he had a power suit and a little bit of gas, a little bit of the roids, but he could deadlift anyways.
That reminds me, I think there was some story Animal told me about you had some crazy back workout that you did.
Or so. Yeah, well, there used to be this magazine named Iron Man, and to get an Iron Man magazine was just first class. And as a kid, we grew up on Arnold, Lou Ferrigno, uh, and Franco Colombo, and it was where was I going with this magazine, Hannibal? What'd you ask me?
When I interviewed Animal, he was talking about some half-hour back workout that you did or something that was just crazy.
Yeah, well, in Iron Man magazine, there was a guy named Bob Hoffman. And if you Google this, it'll come up just like that. He's an old timer. But this was Bob Hoffman's workout. He had an arm workout that he promised you'd put an inch on your arm if you did it. And I did that one. And then he also had a back workout, but well, first of all, the arm workout I did with a guy, and that one we did for 24 hours. But we took a couple hours in between here and there, half hour. So it ain't like you went straight. And then you're always drinking a protein shake or raw eggs. Back then, raw eggs we lived on them in the gym because Rocky in '76 drank the first raw egg and the whole country started drinking them. But yeah, the back workout, I just doubled. And yeah, I mean, we all got that 2 to 5 year kind of gap where your body is just healthy and you're strong, you're hitting on all cylinders, which probably means you could go at it pretty good in a fight and you could, but you only got that gap. And once that gap of time is over, your body starts failing or you get older and you ain't gonna be able to keep up with the guys, in a real fight.
When they made you the Berserker, how did they explain that to you? Because you were already pretty known as Nord the Barbarian when they recruited you, but it looks like your gimmick changed slightly when you became the Berserker.
Yeah, it actually changed a lot. I liked Nord the Barbarian a lot better. We had me and my dad brothers had a car lot, Nord Motor Company. I slammed the guy through a windshield, and it got over big time in Minnesota, or wherever got the Vikings TV, because that's when we advertised, and it worked, man. We had so many people come in that basically just wanted to see the Barbarian, but they ended up buying a car. But so when I went to Vince, and I had it trademarked, and I went to Vince, I says, God, Vince, I'd really like to, keep the Barbarian. I think it's logical. It's, I know, and Vince don't work that way. He's out to protect the WWF, and he don't want to get into no trademark problem or anything. So he wasn't going to go that way. So that's how he made me the Viking with the outfit, and then that ended up being trademarked to some guy from I think Switzerland, but he was actually lived in Japan. I don't know what the exact connection was, but that's what stopped the Viking. And I had a couple matches on TV. Then then Vince came up with the Berzerker, and it wasn't my favorite name. Back then, it was just a little You know, it just wasn't something that was going to really boom to the top. But if you think about it, it's all up to Vince, anyways. You're going to the top in front of the camera, anyways, if he wants you to.
Whose idea was it for the finish that you did where you would basically boot the guys off the apron and they'd get counted out?
That was Ray Stevens. Ray was one of the agents, and that was I didn't like that either because it was just a little too gone, and it was a lot of work. When you're tall and you got boots with a couple inches on the heels, it's sometimes hard to pick up some 5'8" pudgy job guy. It all of a sudden it's really hard getting them up and throwing them over. So I was glad that I quit doing that because somebody shorter and stronger, it probably would have worked better.
How did you like working with Bret Hart? I remember seeing you against him at a house show back around 92.
Yeah, yeah. You know what, Bret? I'll say this, Bret. I was really pissed at Bret Hart because I worked with him on TV and worked out the match. And he says, "Yeah, we'll do this, and then go home." And he was I think he was kind of scared of me. I really do. And so we started doing the match, and all of a sudden he starts yelling, "We got to go home." Yeah, they said go home. They said go home. And I go, oh, and he kind of caught me off guard, and I just said, okay, go home. So 1, 2, 3, I do the job. And if you watch the tape on that match, and that's probably the only match that would be on, Google or whatever, you can see that that's exactly what happened. So he didn't want me to get my shit in. He didn't want me to get my stuff in. And I love Bret. I mean, I traveled with him and we were buddies. But man, he's just such a freaking mark. God, he is just, I mean, and I think he's got a little bit of the old Ric Flair in him that he, if you ask him to tell you a Bruiser Brody story, he'll custom fit it, But I think most Bret's stories are true, But I think he stretches a little bit. But Bret's like DiBiase, man. You run into him, and he talks all about himself. And I did this and that, and I'm doing that. And then you want to tell him about your kids, and I gotta go. Oh, okay. So not a big. I mean, I don't hate nobody, but I'm not a big fan. Not a big fan of Bret. And I know he remembers that match. And I know if I ever run into him again, he's probably going to get in the other elevator because he knows what he did and he knows I'm pissed about it, even after 30 years. Can I hold a grudge for a long time or not?
Most wrestlers do, whether they admit it or not.
No kidding. I think we all do, but it's so damn unhealthy, for anybody to hold any kind of resentment will kill you, not them. But I mean, it's like I think about it all the time. I don't, but it's just something like, all the wrestlers always tell you, I love them. We're always great guys, and we all love each other. We're all on the same team. You know what? I remember a lot of self-centered guys that will bury you when you're not there with the office to get them up higher. That's what they don't ever really tell you about because that ain't, they got this euphoria that, oh man, I love you, brother. We're all good. Yeah, Teddy, except remember, you were such a prick when you did this, um, and all that. There is that part about pro wrestling that is like that. And that's, I mean, Hannibal, the office of the WWE, it seems like they shoot straight and give a total derelict a push, like a guy running the frickin' Ferris wheel down in Louisiana. He gets into wrestling and he'll get a push. And it just always amazes. Yeah. I was talking to Wayne Bloom and Brad Reagans about this, and we're just laughing. We're going, ain't it the truth? They will, I don't know how their thinking is, but they will just shoot straight and push a total freaking nut, but not just a regular, honest guy, you know?
Did you hear about what happened on Raw last week with one of their heels that had been WWE champion numerous times and NXT champion, Seth Rollins, a fan that was 5'4", 180 pounds, double leg tackle him down.
Really?
And he had to be saved by the ref and security. And after, he said he was terrified. Yeah.
No, when did this happen?
Last Monday on Raw,
Oh,
when he was going back towards the ring. Now, what would happen? What's your opinion? Like in your day, if a fan in Bill Watts' territory had managed to take you down on your way back from the ring, and also, do you think as a heel you should be paying attention around you to be watching out for that type of thing?
back then, yeah. And if you were in a crazy state like Louisiana, yeah. Um, you should. And Bill Watts would, we've talked about him, and he would have back then tried to give you a hard time about it and say, that's bad for this business. This, you got to remember, that's pre Eddie Mansfield telling 2020 that it's all fake. Which was, I think he did that in about December '84, and no, so I guess it would be after Mansfield did that. But Watts, yeah, it's like we talked. He liked stirring it up, and if some guys were really pissed at each other, we mentioned that with me and Butch Reed, God rest his soul, that Watts loves it, but Bill was a guy from Oklahoma, and Oklahoma this and that, and I knew, Danny Hodge and all this, and I don't know, looking back, it's just like if I went to Ben Young, and he was just so freaking egotistically full of shit, but maybe we all were, I don't know.
You said last time that you didn't think Haku was the toughest in wrestling. Who would you say would be the toughest guy in wrestling?
Well, what year, Hannibal? Like what era?
Well, let's say your era.
Huh?
Let's say the 80s and 90s that you were in.
Okay, I knew you were going to say that. So with that being the case, I'll tell you this, and I'll say it again. I said it once, and I don't care if Haku's watching this. Haku's, he's a friend of mine, but I haven't seen him for years, but he's just not. I mentioned that to Brad Reagans, who, runs the camps, and Brad got made his money in Japan, but I said, Brad, am I imagining this or what? And he says, no, I think the same thing you do. You can grab a guy and tell what he's got. And like I said, Hannibal, Me and him got into it in Japan, and this no way, because you pull a guy's eye out at a bar or do this at a bar or do that. Listen, that's all bar stuff. That don't count. What I like to think is who would go in that room and what guy would come out the door after 5 minutes, you know? And it isn't him. And it never was. It would have been a guy like, good God, it would have been a guy like, well, I don't know if you can count Brad Rangans because Brad, I know you're kind of talking more WWE and Brad did AWA in Japan and nowhere else. But I mean, Brad would have just played with him, you know, because Brad is Olympic wrestler and he knows judo and all that. It just wasn't going to happen. I think Haku got his steam on this subject just purely on these bar incidences. And you can knock a guy out in a bar. That don't make you tough. We all know that. But he's got a really look to him, man. When you first meet Haku for the very first time, which I met him in '84, you kind of double look at him and go, "Oh man, I wouldn't want to mess with that dude." And he is a tough guy, but he's not the toughest. I mean, you got guys from Danny Hodge, hey, Mike Rotundo. You know, Mike wrestled at Syracuse. I'm not saying amateur wrestling is the answer, but I am saying that there are just there's guys that are just qualified way more than Haku to be named the toughest. I just don't have the list of them right now.
There is a match online from WCW that fans can look up where a jobber tries to shoot on Mike Rotundo, and Mike Rotundo ends up basically stretching the jobber and pinning him for real.
Yeah, Mike. You know, when you grab a guy, you know, I wrestled in high school, and then I played football at Montana State. But my senior year, I could beat their heavyweight, so I ended up wrestling 15 matches my senior year in college. So I had a little stuff behind me, but not like Mike Rotundo. I mean, you do 4 years of Syracuse and you do wrestling. Mike's a great example actually. But I mean, Steve Williams when he was young. And I'm not saying Steve Williams in the late '90s. I'm saying Steve Williams in the mid '80s would have just taken him apart. He ain't gonna beat a Division I guy that took second in nationals twice.
Yeah. Well, playing football too, which I don't even think you can do that anymore. You can't play two sports.
Can't you?
I don't hear about it, but maybe it's possible. I am from Canada.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's possible because it just sounds like it would be stopping their rights or something like that. But maybe not. But yeah, he played two sports, and when I met him for the first time with the Generals in '83, I mean, it was just the character then, man. It's just like watching this. I'm looking at him in the locker room in football, and I'm going, wow, look at that guy. He's got a big gut, but he kind of intimidates me a little bit. You know, and he got with one thing about Doc that always fooled you was he had these veins in his thighs, like freaky veins on top of your thighs. And I'm like, that's an athletic dude right there. And he was really a good football player.
The brother
man,
there's a fan watching that wants to know your thoughts on today's wrestlers and the wrestling product today.
Today, because over the last 20 years, I haven't watched a lot of wrestling, but I mean, one thing I do agree with is something that Bret Hart said was it's just all high spots. I mean, and I don't think much of it because it's high spots. It's all and I don't know, but they're out to draw money and crowds, so their thinking ain't my thinking necessarily. But I do want to plug Wayne Bloom's son is going to end up getting a push in WWE. He's going as what is it, Von Wagner?
I haven't seen it, but I've heard that he's pretty good.
Yeah, he's done a really good job, and of course he got in because Brad Reagan's trained Brock, and then Wayne. I actually introduced Wayne to Brad after I had been in wrestling 5 years, and so he got to know Brad good, and then he wrestled too, and then Brad asked Brock to plug to get Wayne's kid in, and he did. So that's how you get in, man. You got a guy like Brock saying, can we get him in? Yeah, if you say so,
What did you
Yeah,
think
I think he'll do well.
Yeah. What did you think about the rumors that there was something going on between Pat Patterson and the Brooklyn Brawler?
You know what? Let me handle this, John. We don't need to talk about any kind of rumors, Hannibal. No rumors at all. I saw something on
What's going on between you and the Brooklyn Brawler?
Oh, listen.
I've heard those rumors too.
He's a good friend of mine. You watch your mouth about Steve Lombardi and put some lights on.
He is.
You put some lights on when you're talking.
Why can't we all just get along, you guys?
Because this guy Hannibal put up something earlier today talking about the millions of views that he's got, more than ROH, more than New Japan, more than NWA. And not once, John, did he give credit to the man that's behind the ratings. And that's the captain. And that's John Nord. And that's all of my clients.
Because you're rude. You're rude.
Yeah. Okay.
And rude?
And Rick Rude.
Yeah.
No. Is that what you're saying? And Rick Rude? Or
no,
I'm
but we heard a good story about Rick Rude earlier. Can we see the boot? Can we boot this guy out of the hotel room?
Yeah, you know who's going to get the boot? You, because me and my clients aren't coming back till we get the respect we deserve, Hannibal.
What? I don't even get it.